move him in to the sun. Gently its touch awoke him once, at home with spring fields unsown. Always it woke him even in France, until this morning and this snow, if anything might rouse him now, the kind old sun would know. Think how it wakes the seeds, woke once the clays of a cold star. Our limbs so dear achieved our sights, full nerved, still warm, too hard to stir. Was it for this the clay grew tall? Oh, what made fat Jew a sunbeam's toil to break earth's sleep at all?
Wilfred was born into what appeared to be a secure middle-class family. His parents, Susan and Tom, aspired to higher things, and it was upon Wilfred's shoulders that these aspirations fell. They lived in his grandfather's fine house in Oswestry, Shropshire. But when he died, they were left virtually penniless. The family were forced to sell everything in a public auction, and the humiliation was unbearable.
It wasn't long before the town's rumour-mongers were in full swing. Idle gossip that drinking and gambling had led to their ruin. The Owens were accused of once having lorded it over their neighbours, but were not so high and mighty now. The change in the family's circumstances took a toll on Susan's nerves and self-esteem. Tom had returned home from a life at sea to marry her and forsake his own dreams of seeing the world.
Their fall from grace was catastrophic. The Owens fled late at night to a house in Birkenhead, where Tom had at least secured himself a job as a railway master. As they entered the house, cockroaches scattered in the candlelight. Grey lines of back-to-back terraces replaced the hedgerows and open fields that they had known. The Owens' front door now opened directly onto the cobbles to meet the grime and the cold, harsh realities of working-class life.
It must have taken all of Wilfred's courage to walk alone through the school gates of the Birkenhead Institute. The new boy, the outsider, who was often the victim of cruel taunts of the bigger boys. Hey lad, what have you got in your pockets? Come on, empty them out. Ah, it's a book, a poetry book. What a weed, what a weed.
This house is drafty and the floorboards creak. The walls are thin, so it's hard to speak. You keep the front door like a brand new pin. You keep the curtains closed so they don't look in. You crack china on your grand old clock. Time passing fast, no, it never stops. Piano music and embroidery. You're dressing for dinner, it's scraps for tea. It's not what you're used to, but you're making do. Oh, you're making do. You feel part of a different class. The notes round here, the down and outs. Everybody's equal at the end of the week. There's dirty washing, there's ends to meet. It's not what you used to, but you're making do. Oh, you're making do. It's not what you used to, but you're making do. Susan, you're making do.
Wilfred finished his education in Shrewsbury. Now, inspired by Keats and Shelley, he began to feel his parents' expectations tighten like a noose around his poetic soul. They had always expected him to enter the clergy, while he himself was intent on finding his own path. But as was expected of him, Wilfred took up a post in a county parish. His duties involved visiting the poor and sick, and he became aware for the first time of suffering. His faith was constantly challenged. The comfort and opulence of the vicarage seemed a world away from the congregation. This was not for him, and he left the church disillusioned. This was met with dismay from his parents, but in time they relented.
After abandoning what was seen as his true calling and nearing a nervous breakdown, he prepared to leave for France to teach. His mother could only stand by helplessly as her lamb left the fold, and his father felt a twinge of regret as Wilfred crossed the sea for adventure. These were idyllic times. At last he felt free of his parents' expectations, and he embraced the bohemian lifestyle with relish. This gap year was the happiest time of his life.
Bordeaux, that's where he wants to go. There's a boat leaving tomorrow, take him to Bordeaux. In Bordeaux, he can wear a boater and a smile, embracing a bohemian lifestyle there in Bordeaux. Out on his own, away from home, his passions and his mustache have grown. Now he's taking tea with the glitterati. In Bordeaux, he's catching the ladies' eyes, but he's still undecided. He's gonna get his feet wet or keep them dry.
Rumours of war began. At home, young, able-bodied men were enlisting in great numbers. Objectors were singled out for particularly harsh treatment, and their families tarred with the stigma. Although many men saw it as their duty and were eager to fight, some questioned the ritual slaughter. But ultimately, propaganda made heroes and martyrs of them all.
There's only one truth I've ever known. When I heard that bugle call, I'm behind you, I'm at your side. Am I fool or hero? Can you decide? I would fight for you, lay my whole life down. I would die for you, lay my heart on the line. If you're in the rain of bullets or pain, I'll make that sacrifice again and again. It's these words I'm leaving behind that hope to stand the test of time. I would fight for you, lay my whole life down. I would die for you, lay my heart on the line. I would fight for you, lay my whole life down. I would die for you, lay my heart on the line.
Wilfred was invited to visit a hospital in Bordeaux, and there he saw the physical violation of the injured men. So horrific were these visions that he wondered how many other boys had dreamt of returning from the war as heroes, only to end up pitiful in these barbaric hospitals. Returning home, Wilfred's pride in all that was English, and most of all the way of life, won through. And in a very literal sense, he felt his country needed him, and so he joined up.
Wilfred looked for us to a regiment, but they were all named after counties, like cricket teams. He'd had enough of that at school. Then he found one, the Artist Rifles. He liked the sound of that. Well, you would. Nice juxtaposition. Artist, which is artistic, and rifles, bang, for shooting people. So he joined them. Wilfred fully expected to be given a smock and a pallet. But when he got to the barracks, it was full of rough men from Bolton. Imagine, rough men from Bolton. He might as well have joined the Merchant Navy.
Arriving at the front, nothing could prepare him for the horrors unfolding before his eyes. Mud was everywhere. Exhausted, war-drunk men in their hundreds, trudging through it. Out of the carnage came hellish visions of boys with old faces, like doomed youths, tethering, wheezing lame beasts, too broken to run. Wilfred looked away, partly to hide his tears, and also to conceal his fear.
The standard weapon issued to British soldiers in the trenches was the Lee Enfield rifle. The bayonet was simply a knife attached to the end of a rifle's barrel. The main weapon in the German army was the Mauser. Machine guns needed 6 men to work them. They had the power of 100 rifles. Flamethrowers, or trench cleaners, were the most feared sight for any soldier. A Mills bomb was a grenade. Tanks wreaked havoc on the battlefield. The German army was the first to use chlorine gas. It causes a burning sensation in the throat and chest pains. Death is painful. You suffocate. Mustard gas was the most deadly weapon used. It is colorless and takes hours to take effect. Symptoms include blistering skin, vomiting, sore eyes, internal and external bleeding. Death can take weeks. In World War I, there was no such thing as traumatic stress. Life expectancy was numbered in days, and a new phrase entered the English language: cannon fodder.
While passing bells for those who die as cattle, only the monstrous anger of the guns, only the stuttering rifle's rapid rattle can patter out hasty orisons. No mockeries for them, no prayers, no bells, nor any voice of mourning, save the choirs, the shrill demented choirs of the wailing shells, and bugles calling them from sad shires. What candle may be held to speed them all, not in the hands of boys, but in their eyes, shall shine the holy glimmer of goodbyes. The power of girls' brows shall be their pall, the flowers, the tenderness of patient minds. Each slow dusk, a drawing down of blinds.
In the midst of such misery, the tormented, demoralized men on both sides lay down their arms and let some joy and goodwill into their heavy hearts. What seemed beyond the command of the generals was achieved in joyful celebration of a child's birth.
Soldiers began shouting out season's greetings from their respective front lines. This breaking of hostilities led to them exchanging small presents, and on Christmas Day itself, calling a spontaneous truce and playing a football match. A great testament to what human beings can achieve in the face of great adversity. As for the game itself, no one knows the result, though many suspect that the Germans won on penalties.
The captains of both armies forbade such an event taking place again. A great opportunity was lost forever.
If you could take everything that's good about this world, put it in place for one day. The children singing, the wise men bringing some peace on earth. The bells are ringing, and they're bringing everyone together everywhere. The dream of Christmas is here in our eyes, but like the snow it melts away. The dream of Christmas could last your whole life through. All you've got to do is believe. I heard a story from so many years ago that I could not understand. Was it the truth, or was it just a dream? Was it really just one man? The children singing, the wise men bringing some peace on earth. The bells are ringing, and they're bringing everyone together everywhere. The dream of Christmas is here in our eyes, but like the snow it melts away. The dream of Christmas could last your whole life through. All you've got to do is believe. Is believe.
Following this brief respite, combat was resumed, and with it, the harsh realities. Although Wilfred had so far escaped injury, weeks later, he was not so lucky. A shell exploded a few yards away from his head, blowing him high into the air. When he landed, his comrades were scattered and dying all around him. Wilfred's gentle nature would be constantly haunted by the memories of the dying boys he cradled in his arms, as gently as any parent held a child.
It was noted that Wilfred was acting strangely. He seemed confused and his thoughts were scattered. His hands were shaking so badly he could no longer load his gun. This was the breaking point for him. He had seen too much. Reluctantly, he was sent to hospital, shell-shocked. By amazing coincidence, Owen's hero, the war poet Siegfried Sassoon, was a patient at the same hospital, Craig Lockhart. Although fit and well, he had been committed for speaking out against the war. Already successful and respected, he was perceived by the shy young officer as to be almost godlike and as highly esteemed as Keats, even Christ. Owen's fledgling poetry was yet to see the light of day, but Siegfried Sassoon recognized his talent at once. This set in motion one of the greatest literary alliances of all time. With their meeting of minds, the hospital became the cradle of what is regarded today as the essence of war poetry.
I told him, yes, I'm good. I brought, as it were, a trench back to England so people might understand. But Wilfred, you must know by now that I am sandstone and you are Stonehenge. Believe me, you called me Keats and Christ. They spoke the truth. I can remember going through the manuscripts with him as we sat in a corner of the cavernous hall, becoming aware of the masterly quality of his verse. Later, I could not bear to look at his poems, and reading them brought me sheer anguish of mind. I tried to stop him from returning to the war and even threatened to stab him in the leg. But he was determined to. There have been accusations. I never saw Wilfred alive again. And I was never able to accept his death philosophically. It remained an unhealed wound. And the ache of it stayed with me forever. I wanted him back, not his poems.
Bent double like old beggars under sacks, knock-kneed, coughing like hags, we cursed through sludge, till on the haunting flares we turned our backs, and towards our distant rest began to trudge. Men marched asleep. Many had lost their boots, but limped on bloodshod. All went lame, all blind. Drunk with fatigue, deaf even to the hoots of tired, outstripped 5-9s that dropped behind. Gas! Gas! Quick, boys! An ecstasy of fumbling, fitting the clumsy helmets on just in time. But someone still was yelling out and stumbling and floundering like a man in fire or lime. Dim through the misty panes and thick green light, as under a green sea, I saw him drowning. In all my dreams, before my helpless sight, he plunges at me, guttering, choking, drowning. If in some smothering dreams you too could pace behind the wagon that we flung him in, and watch the white eyes writhing in his face, his hanging face like a devil's sick of sin, if you could hear at every jolt the blood come gargling from the froth-corrupted lungs, obscene as cancer, bitter as the cud of vile, incurable sores on innocent tongues. My friend, you would not tell with such high zest to children ardent for some desperate glory the old lie. Dulce et decorum est, pro patria mori.
Wilfred resolved to return to the front with the knowledge that his poems would live on, even if he died. He would silence the voices that had branded him a coward and return to be with his men. While in hospital, he had discussed with other wounded soldiers how to disconnect one's soul from the act of killing. Now, in his own mind, it was machines that were the enemy and machines that were to be killed. This desensitizing made Owen an officer of devastating skill and bravery, loved by his men and decorated by his country.
Soldiers knew their king and country expected them to fight to the death. For many, the horror proved too much. Hundreds were unable to cope. Many were driven insane, and several simply ran away. The army could not afford to carry cowards any more than it could traitors. Many of those who did flee were led blindfolded from a court-martial to face death by firing squad. To some of them, death was preferable to the horror of the trenches.
I saw his round mouth's crimson deepen as it fell, like a sun in his last deep hour. Watched the magnificent recession of farewell, clouding, half gleam, half glower. And a last splendor burned the heavens of his cheek. And in his eyes the cold stars lighting, very old and bleak, in different skies.
Owen's superior education secured him a number of clerical tasks, though he preferred active duty. One such post was censoring the men's letters home and vetting packages sent to the soldiers from their families. Wilfred knew only too well the slight disappointments these gifts, however well meant, could bring.
Mother keeps sending me cakes. I keep wondering if she's baked a file inside of them. I asked her for brill cream. You can't get it here. One of the privations of war is tin helmets. They're terrible for your hair. I've been using snow. It's not the same. I mean, look at snowmen.
Wilfred's task was to read and alter hundreds of the soldiers' compositions. He found this profoundly unsettling, with their gloomy forebodings and dreams of peace and hollow assurances that the writer was in the pink. Many of the men were uneducated, and he would often correct the grammar and spelling. The pity he felt was not aimed at them, but felt with them. He saw them as condemned men whose only crime was their bravery, and these scribbled notes often read like signed confessions. This letter, and hundreds like it, is what Wilfred had to deal with every day.
My own beloved wife, I do not know how to start this letter. The circumstances are different from any under which I've ever wrote before. I'm not to post it, but to leave it in my pocket. If anything happens to me, someone will post it. We're going over the top this afternoon, and only God in heaven knows who'll come out alive. If I am called, my regret is that I leave you and my babies. In my mind, I see you 1,000 times in the day and the night. Your dear face will be the last vision on earth I shall see, and your name will be on my lips. You are the best of women. You look after my darlings for me and tell them why their daddy died. Oh, how I love you all. And as I sit here waiting, we may move any minute. When this reaches you, for me, there'll be no more war, only eternal peace and waiting for you. My legacy will be a struggle for you, but God will look after you, and we'll meet again when there'll be no more parting. I am to write no more, sweetheart. Kiss the children for me once more, and fetch them up as like yourself. and they would not have any enemies in the world. I dare not think of them, my darlings. Goodbye, you best of women and best of wives, my beloved sweetheart. May God in his mercy look over you and bless you all. Would be vain if I prayed that he preserve me today. Eternal love, yours forevermore, Jimmy. Taking shelter in a cellar, Wilfred's company are in good spirits. He allows them triple rations of rum, and in the warm glow of comradeship, Owen speaks openly as the candlelight brings a softness to the eyes of his war-weary men. He tells them how his formative years were at odds to that of his birth, and how he felt more comfortable here with them than in the officers' mess. He admitted he'd often felt himself in a social no man's land, where everybody looked at him like a smell of gas. He ends with a quip on how he survived Birkenhead. The men are sleepy now, and Wilfred is reflective. He thinks back on his life and smiles. He remembers the delights of French cafe society and the halcyon days in Bordeaux.
It's nearly morning now, and Owen studies the orders for the day. It seems a simple enough maneuver to cross a canal and take control of the bank beyond. But Wilfred knows that the enemy will be dug in on the other side, waiting. The dawn has filled the cellar with an eerie light that illuminates the saintly, muddied faces of the lads. Wilfred quietly prays for them before putting pen to paper for what could be the last time.
Dearest Mother, so dense is the smoke down here that I can hardly see my hand before me, and so crammed are the inmates that I can hardly write for elbows nudging me. Next to me, the company commander sleeps on a bench. Everything is fine. I'm unaware, dear Mother, of the metallic menace of the guns outside and the empty crashing of the shells. I hope you are as safe as I am, content in your room as I am here. I'm sure you could not imagine better friends as surround us here. There's nothing to fear now. And even if there was, it will be well behind us before you read these lines.
Out of the blue, out of control, you cut to my core, straight through to my soul. And the words that you told me, they were harder than stone. Now it feels like I'm falling, but I'm moving too slow. I can only think of you every moment I can find. I can only cry for you, one tear at a time. They say there's a rainbow just over the hill, though I've never seen it and I never will. so it just keeps on raining. There's no silver, no gold, just a bunch of old memories that will never grow old. I can only think of you every moment I can find. I could only cry for you, one tear at a time. And the words that you told me, they fell harder than stone. Now it feels like I'm falling, but I'm moving too slow. I could only think of you every moment I can find. I could only cry for you, one tear at a time. I can only think of you every moment I can find. I could only cry for you, one tear at a time.
Graves of the fallen of the Great War are laid out in a regimented uniformity. The men are buried chronologically to mark the place and the day they fell. No rank or status prevails here. They're all simply dead soldiers. Sacrifices bound them together as brothers for eternity. Lieutenant Wilfred Owen, MC, rests in the final row of these graves. It was dug a week before peace silenced the guns that killed him alongside his men on the morning of the 4th of November 1918. His words of war have become words of peace.
Gently its touch awoke him once. At home where spring fields unsown, always it woke him even in France. Until this morning, and this snow, if anything, might rouse him now. Kind old sun will know. Think how it wakes the seeds, woke once the clays of a cold star. Our limbs so dear achieved our sides, full nerved, still warm, too hard to stir. Was it for this the clay grew tall? Oh, what made fat you with sunbeams toil to break us sleep at all?
Wilfred Owen is buried in the war cemetery at the village of Aure in France. He was 25 years of age when he was killed. His mother wore his medal around her neck every day for the rest of her life. His poems are the most studied, next only to Shakespeare, in schools and colleges all around the world. He is widely read and respected by the soldiers engaged in conflicts today. Yet when he died, only 4 of his poems had been published. But the shy boy who wrote elegies to his mother has become the poet's poet and the truth in the face of the old lie.
And what will there be when time heals and softens these killing fields? When the wheel tracks and the hoof prints have faded and the gas and the mud subsided. Scars will endure. The shattered people and their shattered lives. The zigzag trenches, the bunkers, and the shell craters will remain. And the cemeteries, the lines upon ordered lines will remind. And every year, the land will surrender up horrors from its past. And with each spring, there'll be more bullets and daffodils. Bullets and daffodils. Bullets and daffodils.
When I was at school, I heard of you, but I didn't know the price you paid. You were just the name in the room with a cane, a notebook in a glass case, bullets and daffodils for every young man killed, blood-stained on the yellow hills, poppies and monuments for a generation lost. The wind of war is never still. So they took us away to see the graves, and there I found your name in the parallel lines of thousands of lives, all chiseled away. Bullets and daffodils for every young man killed, bloodstains against the yellow hills, poppies and monuments for a generation lost. The wind of war is never still. It's never still. Through these empty streets, you walk like me, but words can be a light. The old school is gone, and other wars have come. Young men still paying with their lives. Bullets and daffodils for every young man killed, bloodstains against the yellow hills. Bring poppies and monuments for a generation lost. The wind of war is never still. It's never still. Never still.